Hello everybody, this is Mr. O'Rourke again. Today we're going to be talking about the Chinese dynasties, the very early ones. I'm going to kind of split this set of videos up into sections. We'll be talking about the Chinese dynasties, the early ones, then we'll move into the belief systems, then to Shi Huangdi and the Qin dynasty, and then finally the Han dynasty. So it'll be some shorter videos, but we'll break it up a little bit more as to what we're doing in class. Okay, so the first thing you've got to do on this one, you got to take notes on the video. I will check them when you come back to class on Monday morning. Answer the questions at the end of the video. There are two. You're going to need to make sure you also copy down the Dynastic Cycle chart that is in the video later on. Okay, so here we go. For thousands of years until the early 1900s, China was ruled by emperors, each of whom was called the Son of Heaven. People believed that the emperor received his power from heaven and that it was his duty to see that the will of heaven was carried out on earth. This is called the mandate of heaven. These beliefs are connected to the early Chinese legends about some of the earliest emperors. And you have, from left to right, Wang Di, Yao Di, Shun Di, and Emperor Yu Di. We will be treating each of these in kind in class, doing a little bit of work in some groups, finding out a little bit more about each of them. But some basic stuff, okay? These guys were considered to be semi-divine, which means they were godlike, and some were believed to have supernatural powers and could be in direct communications with heaven. In fact, the term Di, the word meaning supreme ruler, comes to mean emperor. Okay, and a lot of the emperors take it as an ending part of their name. Throughout history, Chinese scholars have written about these legendary emperors to encourage later rulers to govern with the same intelligence and also benevolence, which means kindness, or they were thought of as good kings. Okay, like his legendary counterparts, the Chinese emperor is expected to act as a father to all the people. He's responsible for making sure that everybody is happy and prosperous, which means they're doing well. In return, the people were expected to be obedient, to obey the laws, and be loyal to the emperor. Oftentimes, and even into modern times, emperors were separated from average Chinese citizens, living in beautiful palaces, eating specially prepared food, wearing the finest robes. At times, they were even prohibited ordinary people from looking at them as they traveled along the streets in one fashion or another. In later times, the emperors lived in what was called the Forbidden City. It is still in the heart of Beijing, China, has a wall around it, and it's now an archaeological shrine and a museum for the Chinese government, but it was only people that were allowed to see the emperor were allowed inside the Forbidden City. Okay. Emperor is usually succeeded by a member of his own family. Most often the oldest son or a brother, thus creating what is called a dynasty or a line of rulers from the same family. And we're going to be focusing on, over the next couple of weeks, from the Shang, the very first dynasty, forward to the Han. Okay, so about 581, we're going to cover a little bit more than 2,000 years of Chinese history. We'll start with the Shang, then go to the Zhou, which is this one here. Talk a little bit about the period of the Warring States. Week after Thanksgiving, we will get into the Qin dynasty, and then we'll go from there to the Han dynasty, which is comparable in size to the Roman Empire. Okay. According to Chinese belief, the emperor has granted the mandate of heaven to rule, which I mentioned earlier. This meant that as long as the emperor is virtuous or pure and creates harmony in the kingdom, he could keep his power. So you can see in the picture, it shows social harmony and harmony with the cosmos, and it's all because of the emperor's radiant virtue, because the emperor is just so virtuous, so good, so kind, so well thought of, so smart, and all these other great qualities. Okay, and that when the emperor has the mandate of heaven, he can rule for as long as he keeps it. Okay? However, if the ruler becomes corrupt or cruel, heaven withdraws its support. Signs would appear, indicating that heaven no longer approves the leader. There's going to be social disorder, such as assassination attempts or riots and rebellions. Floods, droughts, earthquakes, other national disasters ravage the land. And if the emperor doesn't change his ways, if he doesn't adapt to this slipping away of the mandate, heaven will choose another brave and virtuous man to rule the land. And it was usually a man. This new emperor will be able to take over the empire for force. So this is what's called the Dynastic Cycle of China, the chart below. Okay, you start with a new dynasty gaining power and restores peace and order. And he lays claim to the mandate of heaven. You follow the arrows around. The strong dynasty establishes peace and prosperity and is considered to have the mandate. In time, the dynasty declines, becomes corrupt, taxes go up, power grows weaker. Eventually, you may have some natural disasters, floods, famines, etc. The old dynasty is seen as losing the mandate. It is eventually overthrown through rebellion and bloodshed, and a new dynasty emerges. We will watch this cycle take place over the next few weeks as we look at those early dynasties of China. Okay, simple map of the early dynasties. We've seen this one before. In the kind of dark red or orange is the Shang dynasty. That's the first dynasty we're going to talk about. The second dynasty, the yellow, which includes the area of the Shang and then expanded out, is the Zhou dynasty. I know it doesn't look like it says Zhou, but Z-H-O-U is how we pronounce it, Zhou. That is followed by the Qin dynasty. Even though it says Q-I-N, it's pronounced Qin. That's the kind of bluish areas. And then finally the Han encompass all the existing dynasties and expand into the areas that are green. Okay, and during this time, the Great Wall is built and strengthened, and the Silk Road trade routes are established. Okay, starting with the Shang, and we've talked a little bit about them before, back when we were looking at the geography of China. Okay, it's a dynasty of kings with the family name of Shang who ruled for 100 years until the family lost power. For hundreds of years until the family lost power in 1122 BC. Chinese society is remarkably advanced. Some of the achievements of this society were a system of writing that uses thousands of picture symbols. I'm sure you're familiar with them. You know what we're talking about here. They represent both objects and ideas. The weaving of silk cloths from threads of silkworms becomes an important industry. And silk is the key trade product of China for thousands of years. That they trade to other places because it's one of the only places that these silkworms thrive, at least in the natural habitat. They develop a method of casting large and artistically designed objects out of bronze. It's a step out of the Stone Age. Bronze is a combination of tin and copper, and it's very strong and good for weaponry. And they develop wheeled horse-drawn chariots for warfare. Again, another important key because if you're being attacked by soldiers on foot from the other side, you're not as apt to be intimidated unless there's a whole lot more of them than you. But if they come barreling in on you with 4 horses and a chariot behind it and men in those chariots, it's a lot more intimidating a war weapon. Okay, around 1100 BCE, a group of people called the Zhou, pronounced J-O-E, live in northwest China, and they overthrow the Shang. The Zhou are tired of paying tribute to the Shang, and they justify their actions by claiming that they had been given the mandate of heaven or divine right to rule over China. The dynasty lasts over 800 years, until 256 BCE. It's longer than any other dynasty in Chinese history. And you can see on the map below in the pink, that's the area encompassed by the Zhou dynasty. Okay. However, the true rulers of China during much of the period are actually the feudal lords. These are the guys who own the land. They're the large landowners, okay? They're the leaders of the strongest states within the Zhou kingdom. Okay, and you can see in the map in the bottom left-hand corner, there were a lot of these guys. Okay, originally they were members of the imperial family, trusted military leaders who had been appointed by the Zhou to run these territories. Over time, though, however, the allegiance of these guys, their loyalty to the king, to the emperor, fades. And they start thinking more about their own, taking care of their own and their own territory and maybe expanding them. Okay, they begin to engage in disputes among themselves and with neighboring peoples outside of the Zhou kingdom. And as a result, they become powerful regional leaders, and the kings are little more than figureheads. Okay. An example of Zhou dynasty soldiers destroying present crops because they were very harsh rulers. Okay, During this time of political instability, Chinese rulers searched for systems that would allow them to expand their political power. Ambitious rulers gather large groups of advisors and scholars and military strategists to advise them. And as various masters come into favor, books recording their teaching are compiled and circulated. The development fostered the appearance of many schools of thought. There's thought to be as many as 100 different schools of thought in China. So many of these are debated that these 100 schools of thoughts arise, but there's 3 that kind of rise out of that along with Buddhism, and we'll be talking about them in the next video and in class. Those are Confucianism and Taoism, which you researched in your projects, and legalism. And the key thinkers of those are from left to right: Confucius, the founder of Confucianism; Lao Tzu, who is the head of the leader of Taoism; and the man on the right with the very stern expression is the head of legalism. His name is Han Fei, and he becomes very close with the emperor who succeeds this time of the 7 warring states, Shi Huangdi, the first real emperor of China. So what you need to do is make sure you copy this chart into your notes. And then according to the chart, answer the following 2 questions. How did Chinese rulers lose power? And how does a ruler show that they have the mandate to heaven? This needs to be written down, and you're going to turn it in class on the next class. So thank you very much, and we will talk with you later.